So I want to start off with a congratulations, but unfortunately, because it was a very anticlimactic, unsatisfying weekend for the West Virginia baseball program and Mountaineer Nation, I don't really feel too much like celebrating. And it was really a weekend that should have been for celebration, the first outright Big 12 regular season title in program history for the first year of the head coach Steve Saban's era. But after being swept at home of all places, with a lot of marbles to be had, a lot of cards on the table, and being outscored 18-5 with two shutouts, missing out on surpassing the program record for most wins in a single season, and now looking at the outside in at the national top 25 according to D1Baseball.com and their top 25 rankings and the prospect of hosting a regional in Morgantown. I don't really want to pile on, but it was just disappointing. And I feel like depending upon how things go this week in the Big 12 tournament and then the national tournament, this could be another historical moment of record of disappointments for West Virginia in the Big 12. And that's one of the large parts why I feel like I hate being in the Big 12. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Carson Fox for another edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports. And just bear with me as I rant for a second. I want to come back to this baseball team, but just, I was thinking about it. Went to Saturday's game down in Morgantown. Got to enjoy it from Kendrick Family Ballpark. Beautiful day. Absolutely just really appreciated the opportunity to be able to go. My first game since the Kansas State football game this past football season. But just like moments in time that like there's something to be had for West Virginia in the Big 12, during their time in the Big 12. And I'm looking at football, I'm looking at men's basketball, I'm looking at baseball. And unfortunately, I don't know what I call it as part of the Bobby Bowden curse. It's the fact that West Virginia is cursed of having to be in this Big 12 conference, that the conference does not care about us. We do not geographically fit. We do not have any built-in rivalries. And I mean, even with Cincinnati joining the conference from the Big East, it just does not work. But so many times to be had, football, I can think back 2016 against Oklahoma at home. Same thing in 2018. There have been few times and fewer times of any of the big three sports for West Virginia to be had. But then I thought, all right, maybe baseball or maybe basketball. And we had those years, you can recall, where West Virginia reinventing itself in the Press Virginia mold of Bob Huggins' teams. And yes, West Virginia did reach a couple of Sweet 16s in those years. Went up and gave Villanova, the eventual national champions, the best game of any team in that tournament that one year, 2017. But you can recall in three times West Virginia took their shots at winning a Big 12 tournament championship. Just couldn't get over the hump. Couldn't beat Kansas. Couldn't beat Iowa State. And I think baseball. And I think a couple of seasons ago, J.J. Weatherholt having an absolute tear, MVP-like season. Fall flat on your face in a sweep against Texas on the road. Lose in the Big 12 tournament back-to-back. Then implode in a regional. Last year, you don't do well in the Big 12 tournament, but get in, and then you're able to save your season by getting to a super regional, and then this happens. And it's hard, so very hard to criticize this baseball program, given to where this program was before joining the Big 12, before Randy Mazey, before Oliver Luck, and so many donors decided, hey, we're going to try and resurrect this program from almost being cut as a sport at West Virginia. And yes, I'm going to give West Virginia its props. The strides that it meant from almost being cut to now winning an outright Big 12 season championship. Awesome. They will never be able to take that away from these players. In a couple of months, whether they win a national championship or not, you're never going to be able to take that away from them. And, the context of the strength of schedule of the season isn't going to matter when you think back and you're able to include that title, regular season Big 12 champions. So not gonna like pile on these players. It's just like seeing the news today of the Big 12 championship next year being in Arizona. We just don't fit, y'all. Like, I don't know whether it's the combative nature of the programs that they're playing, and it would be so much easier playing in the ACC and all sports, not the geographics, but also the style of play and competition. I don't know. I've argued for, and I could probably make an argument against any YouTuber out there that the Big 12, other than the money, has been an absolute detriment to West Virginia athletics. I know it was the impetus for hiring Dana Holgerson. It was to building a baseball stadium. There's a lot that's gone right and all the ancillary things of taking West Virginia as an athletics program from the Big East and what it was making X, and now a defunct, folded Big East, and now into this Big 12. But it's just like, we just can't get over the hump, and I don't understand why. I don't know if there's just this mental block, or again, in this instance, I want to talk about Kansas. I want to transition to what we actually wanted to talk about in Kansas. And they ran into a good team, but I'm just so tired of West Virginia reaching this line, this like starting or finish line, however you want to call it, and they just need to make this one last step, one last jump to get to winning like everything that you set out to achieve. Like Pitt winning the ACC in football a few years ago just still like tears at me. That like, why can't West Virginia go and do that, beat its rival in a Clemson in like a winner take all game at home, and then parlay that into a, like West Virginia was doing that in the Big East. We were doing that in football. We were doing that in basketball. And it just like the Big 12, there's just this mental that turns into like real roadblock that I just want West Virginia to climb and get back there in national relevance. So, shout out to Kansas on this series. 3 wins on the road. Very good crowds by Mountaineer Nation. Again, I'll tell you about my experience there Saturday, but let's walk it back. Thursday, 3-0 lost. I think kudos, and you got to give a tip of the cap to starting pitcher for Kansas, Don Vagley. 7 innings pitched, scattered 6 hits, none for extra bases over those 7 innings, with no walks, no hit batsmen, 6 strikeouts. Unfortunately, it was ended up being a waste of an effort, but a heck of an effort that it was, and a dog-like performance in starting pitcher Griffin Kern for West Virginia. Felt very much like Derek Clark last season in that Super Regionals effort against North Carolina. 8 innings pitched, did give up 2 earned runs on 7 hits, 3 walks, and a hit batsman, but he struck out 10. Just a lot of deep counts, it felt like, for Kern. 127 pitches. Just kind of kept spraying bullets all over the place. Not necessarily knowing exactly where they're going to go. But, man, they were humming. They had movement on him. He was keeping Kansas off balance all night outside of that very first inning that they were able to tag him for a couple of hits. But it just seemed like it was a 1-0 game for so much of that effort. West Virginia left runners stranded in scoring position in the back-to-back 4th and 5th innings in that contest. No idea how that game goes, if the Mountaineers would have scored in both of those opportunities to make it, say, a 2-1 game. The way Kern was pitching, like, you can't just say, oh, we score there, we would win the game, because Vaguely and the defense just really did what they needed to do. There were 2 warning track shots in that contest that just, you needed an extra 5 or so feet, I feel like, to get out of town, cross the fence, and West Virginia just unfortunately didn't get it. So, contest I tuned into on ESPN Plus from start to finish. It was a great pitcher's duel that unfortunately just didn't go West Virginia's way. Friday, an 8-5 loss. This is where, if you went back and watched my video from a week ago, I would have really liked the switch here to Jack Cartsonas on the mound. I called that in last week's show. I would have made that switch. Didn't know necessarily whether we were going to see Gavin Van Kempen at all in this series because of a alleged shoulder injury, but he got the start anyway. Where I was rather frustratedly questioning here in head coach Steve Savins is why he decided to stick with Van Kempen for this opportunity and having it be on Friday. I know it's unorthodox. It's out of the ordinary for it to go Kern, Kartsonas, then Van Kempen or someone else. But I really, really would have liked Kartsonas there, and he gave you an awesome opportunity there on Saturday, which I'll talk about in just a bit. But you're 19 pitches in, you're only faced 3 batters, and you pull him to go to Ben McDougal. I'm not saying that wasn't the right move in that situation. I'm saying if that's what the logical conclusion was, that big of a risk for it to fall to the degree of I need to pull him 19 pitches in, he shouldn't have got the start then. He just shouldn't have got the start. Like, why did you go to him? And I know, and this is a red flag for me. It's a huge red flag. That tells me that Gavin Van Kempen right now either isn't healthy enough or you don't have the confidence enough in him. Either way, you want to skin the cat. Like that's the way I'm reading the outcome there, is that he cannot be trusted to get out of it. To get out of that kind of a situation. He was way too, deep in counts, 3 batters in again, getting three balls on each batter he faced. And how are you going to trust him in a postseason appearance then? So now who's your second starter or your third starter? That is a huge red flag to me. I knew that was a talking point going into the series and would be as we wind down the regular season and talk about the postseason. And right now, that's a huge red flag to me. Is what is the status of Gavin Van Kempen? Where is his headspace at? Is it health related, with that shoulder, or is it just something in his head? Because didn't look to me like any sort of injury was happening, y'all. Even though that's what the allegedness is here. I just think that he's had a bit of a mental block that hasn't been able to be corrected all season long, save for just a few outings here about a month or so ago, that he was getting ahead in counts, getting on top, batters early, and that created some confidence for him, and that parlayed into 2 starts that he did really, really well. And now he's kind of fallen back into what was causing him issues in the month of February, in the month of March. So it's really unfortunate, and part of April. And the other thing, when you combine that, is you got to leave Chase Meyer in his 9th inning role. And it's like, damn, but, Carson, you need starting pitchers. You need guys who can eat innings, and Chase Meyer is one of your best pitchers. Yeah, but he's like, that's his role, is he's figured out the 9th. It's, you just taking Aroldis Chapman out of his, and even moving him to an 8th inning role. That was kind of the thing that I was debating on the last show with Carson Estrich, whether you put him in at the 8th or the 9th, but putting him in the middle of the game, it's just not working. That it's just, I don't know what it is. I feel like sometimes pitchers just kind of get a psyche, creatures of habit, into routine. I know I say that, and it's like, oh, well, Carson, you're trying to move, one starter up a day and switch the rotation. Yeah, but now, like I said, you're in a sprint. You're not in a marathon where you can kind of switch some things up. You're trying to win every single game. The counter argument, then throw your best pitcher there in a Chase Meyer. Yeah, but it just doesn't work. That doesn't work. And, I would be calling for Carson Estrich in a situation such as this instead of Chase Meyer. But then, he goes in there and he gives up 5 earned runs total and gave up a bomb in that contest. So, I don't know, man. This pitching staff is out of whack. And I don't know necessarily what the answers are. I just think Meyer back in the 9th. Estrich, I think you might have to move back into the starting rotation if Gavin Van Kempen isn't going to be reliable. You got some opportunities from McDougal, from Furman, but I don't feel confident about anybody right now outside of Kartsonas and Kern. But they can't pitch all game every single game. Credit Cooper Moore and his defense on Saturday's contest. 8 innings pitched, did give up 3 earned runs on 10 hits, 2 walks, and a hit batsman, but did have 9 strikeouts. And once Kansas made it 6-2 and 8-2 by midway in this of Saturday's game, the way West Virginia was hitting the ball, you already felt like it was over. So, very unfortunate. You're down 0-2 in the series. You lose the series. But you hope and pray, like Saturday, you got Cartsonas out there. Try and have, at least one takeaway game from this series. Get to that program, achieving victory. You had the stadium. I don't know if then maybe it was a curse that the Big 12 trophy was already in the stadium or they were at home. I don't know what, but watching that contest, pure pitcher's gem, really nice on both sides. Cartsonas doing it obviously for West Virginia and for Kansas, being Gannon Carr, who didn't go really deep in this game, but just, mechanics on point. Only 5 1/3 for Carr. Didn't give up a run, 2 hits allowed, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk, 1 hit batsman. It just felt like the whole game, West Virginia fans were ready to explode, ready to erupt, ready to get into it, like the pent-up frustration from Thursday night and Friday night's games. You were just ready. It was a great crowd. There were a lot of open seats, all, kind of where they actually have seats. My dad and I were able to slide in, bought standing room only tickets and able to find a couple of open seats that we slid into and then sat down. But, a good standing room only crowd there. They had the trophy, did the pregame ceremonies for the seniors. Didn't make it in time for that, but just everybody was just like ready to celebrate, ready, even if it was just one game out of 3, that like settle, like, okay, we won 1 out of 3, we're still Big 12 champs, we earned it, all of that. And it just, like, as the game went along, you just got more frustrating, and I feel like it really boiled over. Bottom of the 6th, very big, first at bat, Skylar King tries to hits a ground ball bunt down the first base line, and he's called out by home plate ump Jim Shalley, who was kind of inconsistent with his to left-handed batters low and inside calls. Going after West Virginia, it seemed like more so than Kansas, and then when he called Skylar King for running out of the baseline, it almost seemed to me as if the way Skylar King was running, he put out his arm on the throw, anticipating the ball because the ball hit off him, and he was called out for it. So, whether that's the right or wrong call in that situation by King putting out his arm to, deflect the ball, in the minds of West Virginia fans, I think as if like, okay, we kind of understood it, but we were just so frustrated with the way that the first 2 games of the series were, trying to buy West Virginia a call in that situation because it was top of the order. Not getting that. Skylar King gets on the next at bat, so you think, oh crap, we had a free out to have out. Jace Reinhardt out. Moves up on a wild pitch to third, and I think it was Sam White didn't come through. So it was just an absolute frustrating game. Almost felt as if yes, I was so happy to be there. Wouldn't go back on spending an opportunity in Morgantown, but man, that is not what I wanted to see. Wanted to spend my time, pay the money to go out and watch. Wanted a little bit better of an effort. At least you got it on the defensive side of the game in Cartsonas. He was awesome. Pitched a gem. 7 innings, 5 hits allowed, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, 104 pitches. He was a little more, I feel like, locked in from the standpoint of being efficient with his pitches, not so as much as Kern getting into deeper counts. So he was awesome. That's just my argument, that I think he should have pitched Friday in a Game 2 situations, and Van Kempen you would have switched for Saturday. So overall, beyond it being just incredibly frustrating, what I feel like I learned from this series, is I got to recant what I said about feeling confident about this lineup against top pitching, like pitching that West Virginia is going to see in a regional. Although West Virginia's faced some really good pitchers who have just been a part of bad teams this season. Like I'm thinking of Coulter McAnally from Utah, who West Virginia played really, and won the game against him in their series at home back in, I think it was mid-March or early April. But they're just in a funk. I mean, 0-10 by Jace Reinhardt. Sam White, I think, was 1 for 10 on this series. Skylar King was 0 for. Let me get the numbers here. Yeah, Skylar King on the series, 0 for 9. Sam White, just a lot of strikeouts. Logan Save and Kyle West, I feel like, were the two unsung heroes, for the series on at least making West Virginia respectable. Yeah, once again, another great series for West. He had 7 hits in the contest, did have a home run and a double in the series. And also, Suave, while having some strikeouts, did hit into a double play. I know he had a double at one point in time in the series. So, yeah, he was 2 for 10. 2 for 11 on the series. So, not the greatest, but, did have an extra base hit in this contest. So, West Virginia, I just felt like, is now in, like, a manufacturing mode of scoring runs. Just, there's only, a few guys. Like, you just looked up and down Kansas's lineup, and they just had power all over the place. And it's obvious. 10th in the country, 98 home runs, whereas West Virginia is tied for 156 with only 53 for the season. So outside of Hussey, outside of what Kyle West spontaneously can give you, Sauve here and there for power, West Virginia is not going to do it with the long ball. They have to work harder and manufacture those runs. So I actually would have liked West Virginia to be a little bit more aggressive on the base paths in this series, and I felt like they tried. They took some attempts here and there. Not as many straight steals, I feel like, for this series, but trying to do some hit and run things. I think it was in the contest on Saturday. It looked like Hussey struck out. It might have been Hussey. Struck out on a hit and run that he just really swung at really crappy of a pitch. And I just thought to myself, you don't swing at a pitch like that as a disciplined batter. Even like a not as disciplined batter, you don't swing at a pitch like that unless you're called a hit and run on. So I just noticed that West Virginia, Steve Sabins was trying everything that he could to try and move runners around, because just for whatever reason, between the three Kansas pitchers, Carr, Moore, and Vagley, West Virginia just couldn't get anything going, especially for anything extra bases wise. They could get some, base knock singles here and there. So beyond the pitching, which I feel like is a mess right now, really, to put it lightly, what do you do with Meyer? What do you do with Estrich? Is Van Kempen a guy who you can reliably go to in a starting effort? You can't, like I say, pitch Kern, and you can't pitch Kartsonis every single game. I'm really, really concerned about this pitching staff. And then offensively, just how have all of them just all, fallen apart? Especially this series against Kansas. You can't say that so much against Kansas State. So maybe you just ran into 3 really good pitchers who are really hot at this time, wanting to win a Big 12 title. But even after Arizona State had that loss on Thursday, that just didn't relieve any sort of maybe, tightness or pressure that the whole lineup was feeling. So I'm very curious, that didn't change from Friday to Saturday either. It was just more of the same. And you just ran into some hot pitching. So it could be that, but just whenever you're thinking, what did I say? It was 6-6. West Virginia came into the series 6-6 over their last 12. Now they're 6-9. I don't want to, like I said in the last video, I don't think West Virginia has peaked too soon, but now I'm starting to have second thoughts on that. That maybe just they've run into, losing that Penn State game on the road and then parlaying that into losses against Marshall, against Pitt in the non-conference. That really hurt. The ninth inning yips that I talked about didn't really have that to analyze in this series. West Virginia really wasn't in that kind of situation or scenario, but just like everything as part of the ship just kind of seems like it's tacked together with paper clips and chewing gum and just waiting for a big wave to come rock the boat. And maybe they've now felt the first wave, they've sustained it, no harm, no foul, win your regular season Big 12 title, and now you're the number one seed with a great draw. And that's what I want to talk about next, is now this draw for the Big 12 tournament. I really, really like it. So West Virginia, number one seed, they're going to face off at 1:30 Eastern time on Thursday afternoon against the winner of the 8-9 matchup in Texas Tech, who's at 9, and Cincinnati in 8. West Virginia won both of its series, swept Cincinnati, took 2 of 3 against Texas Tech, so they'll get the winner of that. Who you pitch on Thursday? Do you pitch Cartsonas on 3 days rest? 4 days rest, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So do you pitch Cartsonas, who would potentially be, if you want to say you're 2, or are you pitching your 1 in Gavin Kern in an 8-9 matchup? And then if you win that, you're going to be facing, either the 12-5 matchup in BYU against Arizona State, or a number 4 Arizona team that you played very hard against, took 1 of 3 in this series, game that went 16 innings on the Friday night contest. And then you're pitching either, Cartsonas, then on 5 days rest, or going back to Van Kempen, who only threw, again, 19 pitches, but has been really shaky. Just like, where do you want to throw Griffin Kern? Where do you want to throw Jack Cartsonas in that order? I feel pretty confident, even despite the way West Virginia is playing right now, in that 8-9 matchup, especially if they get Cincinnati. I don't know, just Texas Tech just had, having way too much past history, I feel like, in the Big 12. And again, being a true Big 12 team, whereas Cincinnati's just in their second year in the conference. I feel a little bit better, just knock on wood, about playing the Bearcats than West Virginia facing off against the Red Raiders, and then take your shot at either your Arizona State, who, or BYU, whoever wins. West Virginia won that series against BYU earlier in the season. Haven't played ASU. Arizona, you went toe for toe for. So thankfully, I guess, in the way you look at this draw too, is that Kansas, being the number 2 seed, if by chance somehow West Virginia makes it all the way to the championship game, which is on Saturday, you wouldn't have to face Kansas until then. Don't like West Virginia's chances in a matchup against Kansas after what I just saw this past weekend, but who knows? Maybe being away from home, and like the football team talked about this. I feel like Neil Brown and other players talked about it. I don't know if it's just maybe a funk. West Virginia's been a great road team this year. If they just being in Morgantown, for whatever reason, the psyche, the pressure of playing in front of the home crowd, like they just feel that all off their backs whenever they're away from home. They can be off, states away, on the opposite side of the country, and they can go out there and give their best effort if they feel a little bit better. Like, that doesn't make me feel better as a West Virginia fan. Why do we spend all these millions of dollars putting into these facilities if there's just a mental block by the players when they're playing in front of their home fans? You would think home field advantage, but instead it feels like it's a home field disadvantage, at least this year, in football and in baseball to some respects, at least just recently. But I like the draw for West Virginia. Have to get back to what made them a 39-5 team starting out, going back all the way to that Penn State game. Whatever happened going into that game, and I know then you faced a pretty decent team who was hot at that time in Penn State, and it just seems like the season's gone sideways ever since then. But man, whatever you did, or going into this season against Kansas, do something different. I don't know. I'm a superstitious kind of guy. I feel like most baseball players are. So you want to be creatures of habit and stick with what's been, working for you for the season. But obviously, you've just hit a bit of a rut. Need to adjust, course correct, whether it's a plate approach or some of those things. I would hope that it's a pretty tough week in practice, or I trust in Steve Saban's judgment whether to maybe give his guys a day off or two to just kind of like mentally unplug from it. Now, especially now that the academic year is over, it's not like they're going back to class. They're just pretty much focusing on baseball and what else they do in the off season. So maybe this is just a good reset. Couple of days, travel day, Wednesday. I don't know, or if they get all the teams go in Tuesday with the anticipation of the start, and then they spend Wednesday in Arlington. But this is now a sprint, single game elimination. I feel like West Virginia has to win all three. Probably beat a couple of, if BYU somehow upsets and West Virginia is beating, let's say, Cincinnati, BYU, and then one of the other teams in the lower half of the bracket for the championship. I don't know if those are three quality enough wins to get back into the national top 16 to get a hosting regional position. That might be slim and none and slim left town this past weekend. But if you go out with a clean sweep, win a championship, so now you're not only the regular season champion of the Big 12, you're the tournament champion as well. I think maybe those two stats alone, with 40 wins to your credit, will somehow, some way, given the way West Virginia men's basketball was screwed over by the NCAA tournament selection committee, maybe as a baseball team you get a bone thrown your way and then you host a regional. But is that even a good thing, given all I just said about how there might be just a bit of a mental block by this team this year, or at least the football team, in playing at home in front of your own crowd? And maybe it would be a better thing if you did what you did last year. You go off the grid, you play in a faraway, distant land, and you come away with a win over a Dallas Baptist, over a Grand Canyon in Tucson, Arizona. You end up winning a regional and get to a super regional. I have no idea. I would love to poll the players. I'll ask you as fans, someone who's watching this program, what do you think? Is it better for West Virginia to play at home or have this, sense of pressure relieved from them of playing away from home? But Big 12 tournament's been a house of horrors for West Virginia, it seems like, for many years. But if they're able to somehow win a championship now, two regular season and tournament, I think it changes the context of the season. And then if you have a decent showing in a regional, you're checking a lot of boxes. But there's still a lot to be had. I just felt like, man, it was out there for you with this series, and I just feel a little bit deflated the way everything worked out. So how are you feeling, Mountaineer Nation? Love to know your thoughts. Leave them here on YouTube. If you like this video, even though it wasn't so positive, but there wasn't really much positive to say, please like this video so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube. Love to have you a subscriber to my channel as we chronicle the end of this 2025 baseball season. We'll talk about more football as the summer goes along, basketball recruiting. I still know there's some craziness going on there, especially with Braden Hawthorne committing tomorrow night. Always, there's never a dull moment, as I like to say, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. So how you feeling about this baseball team? Good, bad, or indifferent? Are you excited for what's still to be had there in the Big 12 tournament and beyond? So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hail West Virginia. Let's go.